Ooh, people are gonna hate me for this. Hey, Tyler from the future here. So a lot of problems came up while recording this video, and I thought I'd just record a little disclaimer at the beginning. This microphone was not charging, so I couldn't use it for a good chunk of the recording, and I was not about to go through and re-record everything because this video had already taken too long to make. My phone also died on me while I was recording the opening 3 segments, so that only made the recording go on longer. So this video is more than likely going to be quieter than usual. So I would recommend to you to increase your volume while watching this video, at least until number 7, because that's when my mic comes back. But yeah, this video was a mess, and I'm probably never going to do a ranking video again. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the video still. Just thought I'd throw a little disclaimer. Welcome back to my 2 cents, everyone, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Now is that time of year where you'll see the typical movie review channels doing their top whatever of 2025. So I thought, why not jump in on the trend and rank all the movies I saw in 2025? Obviously only counting new releases, because if we counted literally every movie I watched this year, we'd be here forever. In my humble opinion, it's been a pretty good year for movies. We've had a lot of cool and interesting ideas. We've had some great reboots and sequels and remakes. But with that also comes some absolute shit bombs. Now, a little disclaimer before we start. There are a lot of bad movies this year that I did not see. So the movies at the bottom of my list are not actually the worst of 2025. Because I mean, I never saw what was called the worst movie of this year, War of the Worlds. And I just try to avoid the worst of the year because, believe it or not, I don't like to watch bad movies. And there were also a lot of great movies this year that I just didn't get around to watching. Either because I wasn't really interested, or just because I missed out on them and I hope to watch them in the future. So if you don't see a movie on this list that you wanted to be on this list, that is why. Also, I made a Twitter or X account if you guys want to go follow that at Tyler's 2 cents with a C at the end because some motherfucker stole my name. It's just another place to upload my content and to, stop people from stealing my name. Also, you may be wondering why I'm interjecting here. It's because some of the audio files that I had on some of the clips that are about to play did not save because my microphones suck and were not charged. So I had to remake some parts of this video. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the video. I know it's a mess. Lastly and most importantly, this is my 2025 ranking. It should not look like yours. And this is all my opinion. If you're feeling so inclined, let me know what your ranking of all your 2025 movies are and get mad at me in the comments, I guess. I can't stop you. This was a very hard list to make with some controversial takes, and you could ask me tomorrow and I would probably switch around half of these movies. But as of right now, I think this is my definitive ranking of all the movies I saw this year. Anyways, let's get into my long ass ranking of all the movies that I watched in 2025. I want to give a quick honorable mention for number 36 because while I did not watch this movie all the way through, because I watched only about half of this movie when it came out because and my friends just wanted to watch it while we were hanging out one day. And while it's not the worst movie to watch if you have a few friends and you want to make fun of it, it is probably on par for me as my least favorite movie of this year, and that is Happy Gilmore 2. I didn't watch the original Happy Gilmore until really recently, and after watching that original film and then going into the sequel right after was wild. This whole movie is just a bunch of cameos from a bunch of celebrities that Adam Sandler likes and knows in person. And to quote Cody Leach, it almost feels like they're advertising the first Happy Gilmore in this movie. And that's not how a sequel works. And while I really do love Adam Sandler, he does not play Happy Gilmore well in this sequel. Like, he literally just plays himself. Anyways, this movie was bad, but I didn't watch it all the way through, so that's why it's an honorable mention and not actually on the list. Now let's get into the actual ranking. At the very bottom of my ranking, at number 36, is already going to be a pretty controversial one, considering how popular this movie got when it came out, but I'm sorry, this movie is complete trash and I can't look past that. And that movie was a Minecraft movie. I know some of you already clicked off, but come on, just hear me out. This movie is quite the paradox because it is so obvious that this studio, Warner Brothers, acquired the rights to Minecraft and was just like, fuck it, let's grab a random script and throw this movie out so we can make a bunch of money. And yet it made almost $1 billion. And that was all because of one man, Jack Black. Flint and steel. I love Jack, and I think he knew what he was getting into when he signed up for the script and acted horribly. But to me, a bunch of memeable lines and a half-decent performance by Jason Momoa cannot save a movie like this. This movie shouldn't have even been a live action in the first place. This movie was always meant to be animated. I mean, basically anything creative involving Minecraft has always been animated, from like the Telltale games to animations online and stuff. Like, live action Minecraft has always been considered a meme. But they were like, yeah, let's just make this movie about breaking blocks and fighting demons and shit a live action because that makes money. But I also think that they made it a live action to stir up controversy. Like, if you make this movie with a really weird cast by having Jack Black as Steve and Jason Momoa and a bunch of these random kids as characters that don't even exist in the Minecraft lore, and a really bad script, people are still gonna want to go see it just because of how ridiculous it looks. The only positive I can really give this movie is I thought the visuals were really well done. I really liked the CGI on all the characters, even though I thought some of them were a bit odd. And even some of the live action props and sets I thought were pretty good and faithful. And of course, the tribute to Technoblade was very nice. I can't wait for 2027 when I have to go watch this movie and hear Jack Black say more stupid shit. Chicken jockey! Anyways, this movie is bad. Move on to 35. Now, with a big jump in quality, number 35 is going to be A Working Man. If you have seen any Jason Statham action movie, you have seen this one. This movie was made by the same people that made The Beekeeper, another Jason Statham action movie that I thought was much better. So when I walked into this, I was expecting this movie to be along the same lines as The Beekeeper, and it was not. There is no sort of gimmick that makes this movie interesting. Like, the whole movie is just Jason Statham being a construction worker that knows how to fight. Like, that's not a gimmick. That's just a slightly different story than your average Jason Statham. For a movie that's supposedly rated R, there's also no blood. Like, at least with The Beekeeper, they used that rated R and gave us some pretty bloody and really gruesome kills. This movie did not. It's just your typical shots and stabs and just shit you've seen 1,000 times. And this movie's just not very memorable at all. The only things I really remember this movie for is David Harbour, Dutch, and that one trailer where the girl that Jason Statham is supposed to save mentions Fortnite.
This is nothing like Fortnite.
And she doesn't actually say that line in the movie. You guys really thought a Fortnite reference would get more people to see your very lackluster movie. Like, David Harbour is a standout. He's the best part of the movie, in my opinion. And Dutch is a cool character, but beyond that, this movie's gonna be forgotten. Jason Statham always at least does a half-decent job at acting, so it's okay, I guess, but it's not a movie I'm ever gonna rewatch. Coming in at number 34 is going to be Heart Eyes. This movie was okay. It's just your typical Scream ripoff that just so happens to take place on Valentine's Day to make this movie sort of a seasonal type of horror movie, which, funny enough, Mason Gooding, the guy who plays Chad in Scream 5 and 6, is one of the main characters here. And I know there aren't a lot of Valentine's Day horror movies, and especially modern ones, but I didn't see this movie as one you'd rewatch every year around the holidays. Like, in my opinion, I'd much rather watch My Bloody Valentine on Valentine's Day than this one. I found most of the characters to be pretty basic and forgettable slasher characters. Aside from Mason Gooding, he does put on a good performance here. The romance between the two main characters is okay. I think it's a more digestible romance story than the typical one you'll see in a slasher. And because I walked into this movie mostly blind, I did not expect to see Jordana Brewster in here, so that was a really nice surprise. It's always a treat to see Mia in a movie. And the gore was pretty good. I just didn't find a lot of the kills to be super memorable. There is one of the killers that gets killed in that church that I thought was kind of good. The opening 2 kills were pretty solid, but outside of that, I don't really remember a lot of them. Honestly, the main things that I remember this movie for is Mason Gooding's performance, our 2 main characters confessing to each other while a couple is fucking in a van, and one of the two killers calling Jordana Brewster mommy. Like, it's a passable slasher, it's just that there's been better horror movies this year, and overall I think better slashers. And like I said, I would just rather watch My Bloody Valentine. Coming in at number 33 is the last new release of 2025 that I saw, and that was the Anaconda reboot. This movie was just a big disappointment for me. And for me personally, I'd argue it's actually the most disappointing release. Because even initially, I was a little disappointed when I found out this reboot was going to be entirely comedy. I thought it couldn't be that hard to really improve upon the original. And I do think that going the comedy route and kind of making fun of this concept is the better way to go about with this franchise. Like, just have some better CGI, some bloodier kills, and some actually good jokes, and this could easily be better than the first movie. Unfortunately, all those expectations went down the drain after the end of this first act. Like, I know that Jack Black and Paul Rudd are really funny actors, but this movie only got like one good laugh out of me, and it wasn't even from either of those characters or even any of the main characters. And the dialogue is just so weird. It's like someone gave a 13-year-old a pen and some paper and said, write a script about a group of friends that want to remake Anaconda, and they actually go to the Amazon and they find a real anaconda. Oh, and make it funny. Unfortunately, this is the last time I'm able to interject. So you're gonna have to deal with shitty raw audio for the next, I don't know how long. And while the Anaconda is the best it's ever looked, it's not hard to make it better. And from what I remember, this is the weakest Anaconda out of the franchise. I'm pretty sure it only kills 2 people. And while there are some cool scenes in this movie, especially the third act, this movie is still just a massive letdown. And I hate to say this, but I think I kind of want this to be where the Anaconda franchise sits for a while. Because I really don't want to see a sequel to this movie, and it's not like they're going to reboot it again or remake it again, so this franchise is probably just going to have to collect dust for a while. Speaking of disappointment, number 32 is going to be The Black Phone 2. I mean, we all knew this movie was going to be made anyway because the first Black Phone was such a success, but this movie should not have been made. I do like what they do with the grabber whenever he's on screen by making him kind of like Freddy Krueger, and basically every scene with him is great. Like, I love the dream sequences and how creepy and analog horror-y they are, and of course Ethan Hawke puts on a great performance as always, but the grabber barely kills anyone, not including the flashback kills. I still like Finn and Gwen, and I think their actors always put on great performances, but their script was less than ideal. And there are a lot of conflicting character decisions that make for some honestly pretty boring scenes, and just some weird exchanges of dialogue. Also, I get why they wanted Gwen to be the main focus of this film, because she doesn't get to do much in the first movie, but for lack of a better term, the grabber is very much Finn's monster. It is still cool to explore more of Gwen's ability to see things in her dreams and stuff and have more of that analog horror style, but I think that Finn should have stayed the main character. Also, some of the effects, namely the one where the grabber grabs Gwen in her dreams and starts throwing her around in the kitchen, could have been executed better. Could the sequel have been worse? Absolutely. But I don't see myself rewatching this movie anytime soon, and I really don't expect much from the inevitable third movie we're gonna get, because this sequel apparently also made a lot of money. Another movie I found to be quite disappointing is Leigh Whannell's Wolfman. This was another movie that I was really excited to see, and as a big fan of the original Universal Monster films, I was like, oh, finally, we're gonna get a actually good remake to Wolfman. Because although I like aspects of the 2010 remake, it's not the Wolfman that I wanted. And while initially walking out of the theater, I was happy with my experience and I thought it was a decent movie. Over time, I really started to see more of the movie's flaws. This movie does not feel like a reboot or remake of the original Wolfman at all. The only things from my memory that actually tied this movie to the rest of the franchise was the title, and the father-son fight was reminiscent of the one from the 2010 remake. If you remove the title, this is just a passable werewolf movie at best, which for Leigh Whannell is very bad. Like, this man has made some of the best horror movie of this century, and in my opinion, this is one of the few times that he's disappointed. I haven't seen all of his movies. I thought the acting was good and the effects were solid, but the story and making the whole werewolf thing sort of this hereditary virus were not so good. Like, you do feel bad for the dad and his family for what they're going through, but by the time you get to the end and the dad dies, I honestly don't remember feeling much of anything. Like, the whole movie was just a standstill where the dad is slowly but surely becoming this werewolf, and he's starting to get all like the senses and the vision, and he's kind of stuck in his own body sort of thing. And then of course he goes full werewolf, but it takes so long to get there and not much really happens in between. From what I remember, most of the scares were just slow and silent build-ups to scares you could still see coming from a mile away. Ultimately, it's not a terrible werewolf movie, but it's far from what I wanted it to be. Sorry, Lee, but I just expected better. Now, the movies from here on up are movies I'd say are worth a few dollars on a streaming service. Coming in at number 30 is going to be a movie that you probably didn't really hear much about, and that is going to be G20. This is a movie I found one day when I was just scrolling through Amazon Prime, not in any particular mood for a movie, and just stumbled upon this because I saw Anthony Starr was in it as a sadistic villain, and it's decent. It stars Viola Davis as the President of the United States who has to save all these foreign leaders from this terrorist organization led by Anthony Starr, and her family's there and she has to save them. And all the while, these foreign leaders are just mostly incompetent. There is kind of a weird sort of favoritism, I want to say, with some of these countries. Like, I think it was the South Korean president was like this badass noble leader, and I think it was the British prime minister or something that was super incompetent and stupid. The action is solid, it's just nothing really memorable. The acting is pretty good, especially from Anthony Starr. I love that he always gives 100% into all of his performances he does, especially if he's playing a psychopath, apparently. It's just another decent action movie with a stacked cast that will probably only be remembered for Anthony Starr's performance, because my god, that guy can just play a psychopath way too well. Now, some people are not gonna like that I have this movie at number 29, because some might say it's unfair to compare this movie to the other movies on this ranking, and with how successful my out of theater reaction and full review was of this movie, I probably should be a little bit biased, but I'm gonna have to put Good Boy at number 29. Listen, this is a very good movie for the budget and the resources that this filmmaker had, but the reason it's this low is it doesn't compare to the movies above it. Good Boy is very creepy, and Indy is probably one of the best dog actors I've ever seen, and I'm happy that they're considering giving him awards for his performance. You can really see the passion in this movie, and it's amazing that this director was able to get such a good performance out of a dog. I love this whole story of a dog that's trying to save its owner from death itself, but being unable to save him. I'm not even going to talk about how the VFX at the end are not very great, because I mean, look at the fucking budget. The real reason I have this movie so low is just because this film was made to be a short film. It was not exactly made to be an hour long. So there are just long instances of silence and nothing much going on, which I know most of the movie doesn't have dialogue in the first place because it's a dog, but I personally like a bit more dialogue and more character development in my movies. And I am not saying this movie is bad. It is great for what it is. It just simply doesn't compare to the movies above it, but I totally respect the art, and having a cute dog helps. Aww. Coming in at number 28 is going to be The Monkey. Now, this is an objectively good movie. There's great cinematography, it has a cool concept, and there's some great kills throughout, but it's just not my thing. Osgood Perkins' style is definitely very creepy, I'll give him that. I just don't really vibe with how he makes his characters and how odd they are. Like, I swear, every character in this movie either hates each other or they're just very odd. And I know that's part of the whole dark comedy of it all, but I didn't really like this type of dark comedy, or at least I didn't find it very funny. Like, someone will watch somebody die and will either heavily underreact or make a joke out of it that some would probably find funny, but I didn't find funny. Like, I'm sure a lot of people love this style of dark comedy and would find this movie to actually be hilarious. I love all the Final Destination-esque kills with like the harpoon kill and the weird ass bee kill. The monkey itself is a cool and creepy villain, but by the time I walked out of the movie, I just walked away with a lot of questions. And I know normally it's good to have a lot of questions coming out of a movie, but in this case, I just had a lot of questions as to how this could actually happen. I know people are gonna say, oh, of course it's a movie, it's not supposed to be real, but like, I'm just watching this movie like, how did we get here? Maybe if someone explained it to me, I'd understand it better, and I can totally see why someone would love this movie. I'm just not the audience for it. Coming in at number 27 is going to be Primitive War. This is going to be a very divisive movie because on one hand you have the people that are saying that this is the new Jurassic Park, it's a Jurassic Park killer, like it's better than most stuff they put out these days. And then you have the people on the other hand that think this movie is absolute dog shit. And I fall into neither of these camps. Honestly, up until the point where they actually reveal how the dinosaurs got here, I was very invested in the story. I thought all the acting in the movie was solid, especially from Ryan Baker and Colonel Jericho. And I actually found myself really caring about these group of men and hoping they all make it out alive. But while I thought that Sophia's actress put on a good performance, I thought she was very exaggeratory to a fault. I love the designs they used for the dinosaurs. I love that they went for more of a realistic approach. And for the most part, the visual effects on the dinosaurs look pretty good. But there are also a lot of scenes where the CGI kind of just falls apart. I know, budgetary constraints. But namely that scene where the raptors corner our characters in that tunnel in the military base just looks bad. But I mean, I can let most of that go because, you know, this film was crowdfunded. But I think my biggest issue with this film is how they explain the dinosaurs being here. Apparently, the Russians were experimenting with some weird teleportation technology and they accidentally teleported some dinosaurs to the present. How that makes sense, I will never know. I figured the most obvious way to go with this story, which I know, yes, this film is based off a novel, was to have these men discover this hidden population of dinosaurs that are being experimented on by foreign governments like Russia or China. Like, I would have loved that explanation a lot more. Also about the roars in this movie, I get that obviously they can't use the dinosaur roars from Jurassic Park, but I would have rather they went about making the roars differently. Like, I wanted the roars to have a bit more oomph to them. The T-Rex roar is just a weird combination of a bunch of different animal noises, and I know the original T-Rex in Jurassic Park was a mixture of animal noises and instruments, but I didn't really care for it as much. It wasn't as intimidating. Speaking of the T-Rexes, I absolutely loved the scene at the end where the two T-Rexes attack the base because they killed their child. That scene alone really knocked up this movie on this ranking for me. Overall, is this the Jurassic Park killer that everyone is saying it is? No. Is this a bad dinosaur movie? No. I think it's just been a long time since we've gotten any sort of dinosaur movie that wasn't Jurassic Park that was good, so people are really latching onto this. If this is more like a proof of concept for what these filmmakers can do with this property, then I would love to see what they could do with a sequel with a higher budget. Coming in at number 26 is going to be Nobody 2. Again, for a sequel to Nobody, it's good, but that's kind of a double-edged sword because Nobody was an amazing movie. At the time of Nobody, John Wick had become the new standard for action movies, and a bunch of other different action movies were trying to take advantage of the hype by copying the story of this older, retired hitman or bounty hunter that gets brought back into this life to either protect his family or protect himself. And Nobody was the standout from this new subgenre. That made Bob both a badass and somebody that was very much like the everyday man. Like, that bus scene really showed that while Bob is a badass, he can absolutely lose a fight. And that scene gave us some really good and realistic action that we honestly haven't seen much from modern action movies. Anyways, Nobody's About Nobody 2. While this movie definitely stuck with some nice light-hearted comedy and the well-choreographed fight scenes of the first one, they started to really stretch that believability. Don't get me wrong, I do like the story of Bob taking his family on vacation because he's been way too busy killing people. Then he somehow gets roped into this criminal organization because he can't help himself but be a good person. You guys know I love stories about family, but to me this movie didn't feel as inventive as the first movie and just wasn't on that same level. This was again another above average action movie that I could absolutely enjoy a rewatch of. I enjoyed it, I just would rather watch the original. With our first MCU movie on the ranking, Captain America Brave New World is going to be at 25. I did not dislike this movie as a lot of others did. I definitely do see the flaws that people are talking about though. This movie just tries to tackle way too much. Like you introduce the new Falcon, you reintroduce the leader, the Red Hulk, Adamantium, Isaiah Bradley's little side story, Giancarlo Esposito's Sidewinder. Like, there's a lot of shit happening in this movie. Also, the way they handled the leader was very disappointing considering we waited 17 years to finally see him in live action, and his design's just ugly as fuck. Like, I know he's supposed to look a little weird, but this is just gross. Like, this is basically an Incredible Hulk sequel starring Captain America. But among these flaws, I still found this to be a very enjoyable MCU movie. It honestly kind of brought me back to the earlier years of the MCU. Cause sure, they were setting up some things for the future and everything, but to me this still felt like its own little movie. I love Sam Wilson as Captain America, and I can't wait to see more of him, more than likely in Doomsday. I also really liked our new Falcon, and I hope we get to see more of him and watch him improve as a character. And of course, when you finally get to see Harrison Ford transform into the Red Hulk, it is awesome. Finally getting to see a Savage Hulk in the MCU for the first time in how long? Feels so good. Speaking of Harrison, he puts on a great performance as always, and I do hope that we get to see him again someday. It's not very likely we will, but I do hope we get to see him somehow in the future. I think he does a pretty good job at filling in William Hurt's shoes as General Ross. I also would like to see more of Sidewinder in the future if possible. So this isn't an amazing Marvel movie by any means, but I thought it was a good time and a movie I can see myself rewatching every now and then, just for the Red Hulk fight alone. Coming in at number 24 is going to be The Housemaid. Don't ask why I'm in a loft. If you know, you know. This movie was a surprise gem for me because I never intended on checking out The Housemaid because I really didn't know anything about it other than that Sydney Sweeney was in it, and because it was based off a graphic novel that apparently is very popular. And I only decided to give it a shot because Cody Leach said it was good, and because I don't think I had anything else better to do at the time. Shout out to Cody, by the way. He put me on a lot of horror movies and is one of the main reasons I really fell in love with horror movies in the first place. Little did I know the ride this movie was going to take me on. The performances from all the actors were amazing, especially Amanda Seyfried and her Oscar-worthy performance as Nina. I loved all the twists and turns that the story took, and there was only one twist that I kind of saw coming, but the rest of them I was completely floored by. I thought they were all very well done and were shocking. Also, I really liked the soundtrack of this movie. It's not really music I would typically listen to, but I thought all the music was perfectly appropriate for all the scenes it was used. All the blood and gore you get in this movie is brutal, for what little there is. And I mean, it's always a good bonus to see Sydney Sweeney naked, am I right, fellas? But just like The Monkey, this movie is not really my thing. This is definitely a movie that's more made for the girlies, and while I can totally appreciate this movie and enjoy the movie for what it is, but the whole time watching the movie I was like, yeah, I'm not the audience for this. I'm telling you, I went to a late screening that was mostly women. I think I was the only guy in there. Also, without spoiling it, one of the characters' personalities kind of changes towards the end, and I didn't think that made sense for that character to have that change. The Housemaid is definitely an unexpected addition to this ranking, and is definitely more for the fans of the novel and the girls, but I found it to be a nice surprise, and I enjoyed it. This one also might get me in trouble, but for my number 23, I'm gonna have one battle after another. Now, if we were being objective, this movie would be much higher on the list. I mean, it's a film with Leonardo DiCaprio starring in it. Of course it's gonna be good. The acting is phenomenal all around. I personally haven't seen much of Sean Penn, but I would be surprised if he's had any other performance that was even nearly as good as his performance in here. I thought this was a very well crafted story because this movie talks about a lot of topics here that are pretty sensitive nowadays, like immigration, racism, and government corruption. But it's able to convey these themes through this main storyline of just a father that has had their daughter taken from them and now has to find her, and makes these themes that normally would turn me off from a movie more digestible and more entertaining. I also actually really enjoyed this type of dark humor. Like, if you ignore all the fucked up shit that's happening on screen, this movie is actually pretty hilarious. But the reason I have this movie this low on my ranking is just because I don't see myself rewatching this movie hardly at all. Again, I enjoyed this movie despite the topics mentioned, but normally if I'm going to watch a movie, I prefer to, escape reality and not be reminded of how shitty the real world is. I'm totally fine with movies talking about real life issues through subtext or, underlying themes and all that. But when the movie is so forward about these real life themes and it basically encompasses the entire story, it makes it a lot harder for me to want to rewatch the movie. I enjoyed this movie and I definitely think it's going to get some Oscar nominations, but it is just not something I would usually watch. Coming in at number 22 is going to be the first movie I ever did a full review on this channel, and that is Him. I might be slightly biased because this was my first movie review, but even without that, this movie is an interesting experience. It's the first football-centric horror movie that I know of with a both horrific and interesting take on the whole underdog story. I like that this movie really shows the horrors of grooming and the sports industry as a whole, while being encouraging and really asking yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want, or to do what you want? At least I found that shit encouraging. For who is a largely comedic actor, Marlon Wayans really puts on a very creepy and good performance as Isaiah White. I also liked what few kills we got. You don't really get a lot of them until the end, but when the kills do come, they are great. What really does bring this movie down for me is just how the film is shot. It's like a really trippy music video. Like, if there was ever a movie to get high to, I think Him would have to be the best. Or maybe the worst. I've never been high before. Like, if you aren't paying attention, the fight between Cam and Isaiah is very confusing to watch. Him will now always have a special place in my heart, but it's still not a movie I'd watch very often, nor while I'm high. Coming in at number
21.
is gonna be Novocaine. It feels like almost every year we get some sort of action movie like this that has an original idea that makes for just a good fun time. Jack Quaid has been on a real roll these days, and while I'm not gonna say this is his best performance of the year, that's higher up on my list, I'd say this was his funniest role of the year. Like, I love that although he can't feel pain, he still has to be careful because if he endures too much pain, he's just gonna die. And he tries to save this girl that he just got with from some bad people. It really makes for some brutal yet comedic scenes and some pretty solid action. Like, obviously Jack Quaid isn't doing like flips and kicks and shit, but it's still some pretty fun action to watch. I do like the love story between Nathan and Sherry. I like Jacob Batalon's small role here as Jack Quaid's friend. And I like that whole twist they did in the third act that really made this movie not so much of your typical action movie. The only reason this movie isn't higher on my list is because, well, it's my list, so it's my rules. And I just didn't find a lot of the kills to be very memorable. Hey, like I said, there were a lot of good movies that came out this year that I watched. Oh boy. People are going to hate me for having this movie this high on my ranking. But look, I got more out of this movie than the average moviegoer, and that movie is gonna be Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
I already hear you about to comment, just let me explain myself. Did I have issues with this movie? Abso-fucking-lutely I did. Hell, go check out my review of this movie. I rant for a while about a few characters and things that happen in this movie that I thought were very flawed. I am absolutely not blind to all the flaws of this movie, but as a longtime fan of the games and the first movie, I was able to let a lot of things that normal people would call flaws go. Yes, the story is weird and complicated. Yes, there are some changes to some characters that I didn't really like. Yes, Vanessa is still annoying. But things like the story being weird and complicated are just things that I associate FNAF with. Like, to me, if the story's not complicated and weird, that's not Five Nights at Freddy's. I still do love Mike and Abby, even though Abby is still annoying sometimes and makes some dumb decisions. I actually really like what they did with Charlotte and Henry, and I really hope we get to see more of those characters in the sequel. Of course, for what little time he is on screen, Matthew Lillard as William Afton is incredible. I also love the animatronics. I mean, I wish Toy Chica didn't take up all the screen time from Kellen Goff and Matt Pat, and I wish Kellen Goff got to do more lines as Toy Freddy, but I thought they all looked amazing and very accurate. And just like the first movie, they do find a way to sneak in some pretty good kills in here while keeping their stupid PG-13 rating. Listen, I don't expect you to agree with me. Hell, I will never defend this movie. If you hate this movie, I will agree with you. But it's my ranking, and I still enjoyed what Scott did with this sequel. And I'm still very excited for when we finally get to see Springtrap in FNAF 3, and finally get to see Matthew Lillard at his full potential. Now, from here on up, our movies, I would say, are worth a ticket or a physical copy. So the rest of these are definitely movies I would recommend that you check out the most. Coming in at number 19 is going to be the Running Man remake. Now, since my full review of this movie, I have still not watched the original Running Man, so I don't have a lot to base this remake off of other than reviews by other critics that I follow and Arnold Schwarzenegger. But I thought this was a really good action movie. All the acting was amazing, especially from Josh Brolin and of course Glenn Powell as the lead. I like this whole story, that again involves family, of Glenn Powell risking his life to try and help his sick daughter and get money for his wife and his kid to move out of the slums. And he plays the most dangerous game that is also being controlled by the network, which is basically the government. The action is explosive and almost constant. There are times where the humor does fall a little flat for me, but I still thought the comedy was enjoyable, mostly because of how Glenn Powell is such an angry motherfucker and making everybody uncomfortable. This is another movie that's message is very much like the government is corrupt and we need to rise up against this corrupt government, which I mentioned I do not have a problem with, as long as it isn't the whole movie and, you know, if the movie is good. To me, the last half of the movie definitely wants to emphasize that message to almost a fault where I'm kind of like, okay, I get it, I hate the government too. But hey, it pays off ultimately. One of my few gripes with the movie though is how Glenn Powell is so fucking lucky. I know the network is controlling the game and hey, we wouldn't have a movie if he wasn't lucky. But even then, it is kind of crazy that he just so happens to find people that are so willing to help him and survives all the shit that is being thrown at him. I also feel like this movie had a few too many twists and fake endings near the end. Like, if you do it once or twice to kind of deceive the audience a little bit, that's fine. But when it gets to like the fourth time, you really start to ask yourself, when is the movie really gonna end? Ultimately, this remake was a good time. I just wish they would have dragged out the ending a little less. Coming in at number 18 is one of my big three most anticipated movies of this year, and that is Jurassic World Rebirth. I have been a huge fan of the Jurassic Park franchise ever since I was a kid. I loved the first Jurassic World, and I even got some enjoyment out of Fallen Kingdom, but like everybody else, I absolutely hated what they did with Dominion. So when I saw the casting of Rebirth and Gareth Edwards was going to be directing it, I was like, okay, this can't be as bad as Dominion. So my expectations were a little high for this sequel, and I think they were met. I love Scarlett Johansson and just about everything she does. I know, I'm a simp. But even then, I think her and the rest of the cast really puts on a great performance. The problem is there's just too many characters, and therefore too many side stories. I like all the characters, at least the ones you're supposed to like. It's just not all of them get fully fleshed out. I like the direction they're taking with the franchise by having a lot of the dinosaurs die out and the last of the surviving ones are around the equator, and that people are really losing interest in the dinosaurs, and it's not special to see a dinosaur anymore because now they're everywhere. And I think going this direction can make for some really good sequel potential, which I would be surprised if there isn't a sequel to this, considering how financially successful this was. By the way, I love all the new looks for the dinos. A small part of me will always miss those original designs like Rexy, even though she is definitely dead, and the original JP3 Spinosaurus, but all the new designs look amazing. And I really like the addition of these horribly mutated and dangerous dinosaurs that were just left on this island that was the original testing site for the original Jurassic Park. Although they could never get the scaling right on the D-Rex. Like, come on, in one scene he's chewing on a helicopter and the next he just hits a car. Like, how big is he? Which the D-Rex is a design that really had to grow on me. It's definitely reminiscent of the Mutos from Godzilla 2014, which, you know, Gareth Edwards directed. Like, literally, if you look at the original concept art for the Mutos, looks about the same. The CGI all the way around looks amazing. Finally getting to see that raft scene from the original novel realized into beautiful live action is just one of the best parts of this entire movie. Overall, while still not quite the movie I wanted it to be, I'm happy with how this movie came out, and I hope that this means that this franchise can now head in a much better and healthier direction, and we can continue to get some good sequels instead of Dominion. Coming in at number 17 is going to be Companion. I was extremely late to the hype on this movie. Like, I didn't even watch this movie for the first time until November. And I am now kicking myself in the ass for not watching this movie in theaters when it came out. I'm not going to give away much just in case you haven't watched the movie or haven't even watched the trailers. But Companion is about this couple that goes on a little friend vacation to this nice house and shit just hits the fan. Since I went to this movie mostly blind, all the twists were very effective. There was one twist that I did see coming because of the marketing, but besides that, I found the story to be very entertaining and unpredictable. And in my opinion, this is Jack Quaid's best performance of the year. Sophie Thatcher also does great as the quote-unquote final girl. All the kills are pretty kick-ass, and overall this movie's just a fun time. The only reason I'm really putting it at number 17 is because it is a smaller scale movie. Like, I'm not talking about the budget or effects, which the effects are great by the way, but more so that this movie has its big reveal around right before the middle half of the movie, and that's the rest of the movie. Which is not a bad thing. If anything, it can make this movie's rewatchability go up, but in my opinion, it felt like a lot more was happening in the movies that I have ranked above it. But this is still a great horror surprise that I think a lot of people are going to have in their top 10 horror movies of the year. Number 16 is definitely going to raise some eyebrows for some people because number 16 is going to be Death of a Unicorn. A lot of you probably don't even remember hearing about this movie earlier on this year. But this movie's about a father and a daughter that travel up into these mountains to see this rich family to kind of get a little piece of the pie, if you know what I mean. And on their way there, they hit and kill a baby unicorn. They bring the baby back to the house, and eventually these rich assholes realize they can use the unicorn to perform magic and to, you know, cure diseases and make more money. And to avenge their dead child, the parents come back and terrorize this family. Although I still think Paul Rudd's comedy fell a bit flat compared to a lot of the other actors in this movie, he's still funny here and still has some nice heart-to-heart moments with his daughter played by Jenna Ortega. All the acting overall was really good. I especially liked Will Porter's performance as the son of this rich family. I also liked a good amount of the jokes in the movie. There are a few things I wish they could have done better, like less CGI and a few more practical effects to really enhance the effects. And this movie did kind of have a case where it felt like they had multiple endings in mind and couldn't decide which one. This movie is not really for everybody, but I personally love monster movies and weird concepts like these, so I found myself to really enjoy this. Coming in at number 15 is a movie that I know most of you have not seen, and that is Dangerous Animals. The reason why you probably haven't seen it is because this is a Shudder exclusive. Not sponsored, but if you don't know what Shudder Stars. It's a streaming platform that is for horror movies only. I heard this movie was coming out from Cody Leach again, and he said it was really good, so I gave it a shot. And I think I'm gonna have to agree with Cody and say that this is probably my second favorite shark movie of all time. Behind Jaws, of course. It's about a serial killer that captures couples and takes them on his boat and films them getting eaten by sharks. So it's not entirely a shark movie, it's more about a serial killer that uses sharks to kill people. But regardless, the killer played by Jai Courtney is terrifying and absolutely sadistic. It's so unfortunate that he probably won't get a lot of recognition from any sort of award ceremony for his performance in this movie. Our final girl here is great. All the shark scenes are tense while making the sharks not look like the bad guy, which is honestly pretty abnormal for a shark movie. All the kills were very well done and brutal. The only thing is the film does kind of drag a little bit towards the end, and this movie also kind of suffers from feeling like it has multiple endings. Besides that, I think this is one of the biggest surprises for me of this year in terms of how my expectations were going into the movie and how much I enjoyed it when it was over. Coming in at number 14 is going to be the Silent Night reboot / remake. This is another horror movie that surprised me with how good it was. We have had a lot of surprisingly good horror movies this year, haven't we? And although I still haven't seen the original myself, I already knew a lot about it going into the film, so I knew what I was getting into for the most part. And I already knew that the original wasn't that great of a horror classic, but this reboot was getting a lot of positive reviews, and I heard it was making a lot of good and surprising changes to the story, so I started to get a little bit hyped for it, and I would say that that hype was warranted. I love that the first half of this movie really makes you think that the movie is going to be very predictable and like every other slasher you've ever seen. Like, I do love the love story between Billy and Pam, and the kills in the first half were pretty good, but it made me think that that was all we were going to get. Thankfully, this reboot does exactly what a reboot should do. It stays faithful to the original while expanding on it and making changes to that story that really surprise the audience, and in my opinion, making it an improvement over the original. The twists they make, you will not see coming. I just wish that they would have added more gore to the majority of the kills, and I wish the ending didn't feel so rushed. But I think this is going to become another one of those horror holiday classics that I rewatch every year around Christmas time. Now, from here to the end, I think these are all the movies that are worth paying double for. Like, these are the best of the best this year, in my opinion. I got a feeling I'm gonna have to defend myself again because number 13 is going to be F1. I don't have any issues with this movie, genuinely. It's very reminiscent of Top Gun Maverick, which, duh, the same people that made that made this. I love all the characters and the actors' performances. All the racing scenes were shot masterfully, and most of it was performed by the actual actors, which is very impressive. And I love the story of this guy played by Brad Pitt that used to be a racer that comes back to teach this younger racer played by Damson Idris to become the next best racer. That's just the spark notes. There's much more to the story. So you may be asking, Tyler, if you think this movie is a 10 out of 10, then why is it at number 13? Well, that's because I'm not the biggest fan of F1 or racing movies as a whole. I just prefer movies more along the lines of full-on action movies, monster movies, or something more like Top Gun Maverick. This movie's just not quite my taste. I still really love the movie, it's just not something I rewatch as much, or enjoy as much as the movies I have above it. I'm sure everyone watching this video has F1 much higher on their ranking for this year, and that's cool. I just didn't love it as much as my number 12 to 1. Coming in at number 12 is going to be the live-action How to Train Your Dragon remake. Now, I know the term live-action remake has really had a negative connotation recently, mostly because of Disney, but I think this is the rare case of a live-action remake done right. This movie was made by the same director that made those original films, and Gerard Butler even came back to return as his character of Stoic, so the people behind this remake actually understood the franchise, and that alone made a world of difference. I'm normally not a fan of shot-for-shot remakes, but what How to Train Your Dragon does different for me is how accurate to the original film that it is, and how good that CGI was. All these actors do an incredible job at making these live-action versions of these characters really feel like their animated counterparts. I don't really know how to explain it other than it really feels like I'm watching the original How to Train Your Dragon with like a realistic filter over it. There are a couple of interesting changes they make to some characters, like Rough Nut and Tough Nut, and making Astrid mixed. But other than that, all these characters are still the same ones that you love from the first movie. All the dragons look absolutely perfect, and the action and flight scenes look beautiful, especially with that incredible soundtrack. I could honestly see myself having a hard time choosing between wanting to rewatch the original film or this remake. Like if I'm more in the mood for an animated film, I'll watch the original. If I'm more in the mood for something live action, which is more often, then I'll watch the remake. Obviously, the main criticism against this movie is gonna be you know exactly what's going to happen. There's no surprises here. But regardless, I'm still going to say for now that this is the best live action remake I have ever seen. Eat your heart out, Disney. Coming in just below the top 10 is going to be Ballerina from the world of John Wick. I think this is a great return back to the John Wick franchise. I love the expansion of the lore and just the overall world. In particular, getting to learn more about the Rasca Roma. I thought Ana de Armas did a great job as Eve and leading this movie. I like that they make her both a lot like John Wick, but still very much her own character. Speaking of Mr. Wick, the few times that Keanu Reeves is on screen, he is great as always. I like how they tie him into this story that takes place during the events of the third movie and the fourth movie. It's a John Wick movie, so of course the action scenes are all gonna be amazing. I especially liked the scenes of Eve fighting off this entire town by herself and the flamethrower versus the fire hose. All the new characters introduced are cool and interesting, and I would love to see more of them, namely Norman Reedus' character, but I guess that's what sequels are for. Sure, we don't have John here anymore, but I think between characters like Eve and Kane, I think this franchise can still go on for a long time. Now we have finally made it to my top 10 of 2025, and the sun is about to go down. This was the hardest part of this ranking to make because you could ask me tomorrow and I would have switched around like 6 of these movies. But coming in at number 10 is going to be Predator Killer of Killers. My expectations for this movie were not very high. It's an anthology movie, which already is not a strong start for me, and it's a Hulu exclusive. But all these different anthologies are stories that Predator fans have been wanting to see for a long time. Like we finally get to see Predators versus Vikings, Predators versus Samurai, and Predators versus World War II pilots. I mean, I still thought it was cool. And while I still think they should make full-length movies dedicated to these stories, the way that they execute these stories and culminate them into this big final battle for survival in this shorter form fashion, for the most part, is very well done. I say for the most part because I would have liked to have seen more from the Samurai story. But besides that, I think these stories are all done very well. I like the look of all the Predators in each of these stories, even the pilot Predator, even though he was a little lackluster compared to the rest. I absolutely loved the King Predator, and I hope we get to see more of him, especially in a live action setting, because he would look amazing in live action if they do him right. I even like the human characters. I do wish Kenji got a bit more character development, but it's an anthology, so I get it. Ursa is definitely the standout character though. She got the most character development and made me want to see more of her in the future, even though she's more than likely dead. The animation is great, and just like Predator Badlands, I love that they continue to expand the lore of the Yautja. I love this idea of the Yautjas picking the strongest warriors across the galaxy and across time and putting them against each other in this arena. And that ending has me excited for what we could see in the future, especially with that post-credit scene. For a concept I normally would not be interested in at all, Killer of Killers is that one anthology movie that I would recommend to people that normally hate anthology movies. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Zootopia 2. If you would have told me at the start of this year that Zootopia was going to be in my top 10 of this year, let alone on my ranking, I would have thought you were fucking crazy. I explained in my short review of Zootopia, and I plan to explain it further in a full review at some point, that for a while I had this weird mentality that I was too old for Zootopia. I know, coming from the same guy that collects toys. But after getting my favorite scene from Zootopia 2 spoiled for me, I finally decided to give the first Zootopia a shot. Ended up loving it, and then ended up watching this movie. And while I'm still hesitant to say that this movie is better than the first, it is a damn good contender to it. I actually like that Nick gets more of a focus in this movie, since Judy got most of her character development done in the first movie. Nick has such a great character arc in this movie, where he realizes how much he actually does care about Judy, and not to hide all of his emotions behind his sarcastic like don't care attitude. And while Judy doesn't go through as much of an arc as Nick does, she still does get a nice arc where she realizes that she doesn't have to prove herself to everybody. I also like how they kind of scaled down this story a bit more compared to the first movie. Get it? Scaled. And what I mean by that is I feel like there's only two main themes that are being explored with this movie: dealing with trauma and racism. There are of course themes like the government being corrupt, but those are the two big ones that I really took away from this movie. Gary the Snake is a great addition to this cast, and I really hope we get to see more of them in the inevitable sequel. I liked the subtle references to the real world, one in particular being about the movie industry going down the tubes, and a certain comic. And I would argue that the animation here is even better than the first movie. And the first movie's animation was already pretty amazing. One thing I found interesting about this sequel is how subtly horny it is. There are a lot of scenes that I'm not a furry. Also, I feel like Disney's just afraid to make Judy and Nick become a couple because of the implications of that. Anyways, this has got to be the biggest surprise of the year for me because I absolutely did not intend on watching this movie. And it only took one scene getting spoiled for me to immediately fall in love with this now franchise. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Thunderbolts, or The New Avengers. I'm never going to call this movie The New Avengers, but that is what the asterisk means at the end of Thunderbolts. I had relatively low expectations initially going into this movie just because of the cast that we had, and that they ended up taking out characters from the original lineup of the Thunderbolts that I thought were going to be more interesting. But man, this movie really surpasses all the expectations you think you have for it. Before the movie even came out, people were saying that this was like the Black Widow sequel, which I personally think is an overhated movie. And besides Bucky, people didn't really know much about Ghost, John Walker, or Taskmaster, so this film, unfortunately, was kind of doomed to fail. But I encourage anybody that did not give this movie a try on its initial release to give it a try, because this movie actually makes you care about these characters that were essentially nothing characters to the general audience. Like before this movie, I hated John Walker. To me, he was irredeemable. But after watching Thunderbolts, I was like, okay, you get one chance. I still think Ghost could use more character development before I can fully like her, but she is a better character now. And Florence Pugh as Yelena is probably my favorite new Avenger. She's the most depressingly relatable character in the MCU, and her friendship with Bob throughout the movie was just so sweet. Having all of these characters be some sort of manifestation of mental health issues and how people deal with these issues makes for this very emotional, relatable, and powerful message to people that are struggling, that they are not alone and to take care of themselves, which really spoke to me as someone who does struggle with depression and anxiety. There were even some scenes with Yelena and Bob that made me tear up a little bit, because while they're talking about some messed up shit that happened to them, I will say I hate that Valentina keeps getting away with this shit. I really hope they find a way to kill her off soon. There is a lot more to this movie that I will hopefully talk about in a future full-length review, but for now, this is an absolutely underrated MCU banger that deserved way more love on its initial release.
Guys, I think the mic is working.
In another case of a movie that should have been higher on my list, coming in at number 7 is going to be Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. This is the definition of a horror epic. It's less a remake of the original Universal Monsters classic and more of a more accurate depiction of the actual novel Frankenstein. The visuals in this movie are absolutely immaculate for a Netflix film. Like that scene where Dr. Frankenstein creates his monster is so well done. And this whole movie's just beautiful to look at. I mean, it's Guillermo del Toro. Of course this movie was going to be gorgeous. I mean, we are talking about the same guy that made Pacific Rim. I also love that this movie gives us two different perspectives. One from the perspective of Dr. Frankenstein for the first half, and in the second half you get everything from the perspective of the monster. I also love that they make this version of Frankenstein much more accurate to the novel by making him really intelligent. He isn't just some mindless monster monster that only walks around and grunts. He is an intelligent being that is learning how to be human, that realizes that it is impossible for him to become human. All the performances in this movie are fantastic, but I would be surprised if Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elord didn't get some kind of Oscar recognition for this, because my god, did these two act their asses off to give us what quite possibly could be the best version of both Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. Not to mention Mia Goth's performance as Elizabeth is great. Also, the way that Frankenstein gets all these human parts to put together this monster is so much more disturbing in this. The practical effects used in this movie are some of the best I've seen all year. I also love that by the end of the movie, there's this moment of understanding, an almost touching moment between the monster and his creator, Dr. Frankenstein, that really leaves this movie on such a tragic note, which is just what these Universal monster characters are, or at least how they should be. My only little nitpick for this movie is I do wish we got more time with the monster. Like, Dr. Frankenstein got a fully completed arc, and I feel like we just needed more time with the monster to really give him an arc to complete. And admittedly, I would have liked to see more carnage from Frankenstein's monster. But other than that, the main reason this movie is not higher is because it's not very rewatchable. Not only is it a depressing movie by design, but the movie is pretty long. 2.5 hours long to be exact. But besides those little things, this movie is an absolute masterpiece. And this just makes me want to fight for my Creature of the Black Lagoon remake so much harder now. And I'll be honest, this is probably the best thing that Netflix has made in a long time. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Weapons. I was so excited for this movie when it was announced just off of the premise alone, and that Zach Kreger was directing it. This man has been making some of the scariest and, in my opinion, some of the best horror movies as of recent. Barbarian scared the shit out of me, and while I did like Barbarian, I thought it was a bit too weird for my taste. And while Weapons is definitely weird, it's weird in a very creepy way that didn't make me want to gag. Like, just the premise of every kid from this teacher's class, except for one, woke up randomly in the middle of the night, walked downstairs, walked out the door, and did this weird ass run into the darkness and never came back. That is so creepy and gripping. I think more movies should take notes from Weapons teaser trailer because it tells you everything you need to know about the movie without telling you anything. The cast is great. You have Julia Garner here as the teacher who has just been killing it this year. She is completely innocent but keeps getting harassed by all these parents because obviously their kids are missing. You've got Josh Brolin here as one of the parents who I think puts on a debatably better performance than his great performance in The Running Man. I also love that Zach is able to add in these great moments of humor in a movie with such a dark subject. The gore you get in this movie is shocking, not in a Terrifier way, but it comes almost out of nowhere and it all looks great. And most of all, I think this movie is fucking scary. I know I'm pretty easy to scare, but I'm telling you, the only other horror movie to actually scare me like this was Barbarian. And I would even argue this film is scarier. I won't say anything else so that you can go check out Weapons for yourself if you haven't already, and if you haven't, go in as blind as possible. Zach Kreger, sir, you have my undivided attention. Now, the movie that is just cracking my top 5 is going to be Predator Badlands. Who would have thought that I'd have 2 Predator movies in my top 10? Before I get all the way into it, although I did love this movie, I would like future Predator movies to lean more into the horror and the rated R elements of this franchise and try to stay away from the PG-13 action. Because while this movie is certainly a lot of fun, I really hope that this doesn't teach Fox the wrong lessons. With that out of the way, you can't convince me this isn't the best Predator movie since the original. This is almost everything I want from a Predator movie. I have always wanted to see a Predator movie where they have a Yautja as the main character, and we finally got it. Deck is an absolute badass. His design could still use a bit of growing on me, but it is still a really cool design. The use of practical and digital effects to bring Deck to life is impressive. I love the expansion of the Yautja dialect. If they ever make a Yautja dictionary, I am learning how to speak Yautja that day. All the action is choreographed very well and it all looks amazing. I mean, everything in this movie looks amazing, from Yautja Prime to the Kalisk to the scenic views of the planet that Deck landed on. The humor could have been better, but I'm here more for the action anyway. Thea is a decent sidekick for Deck. She can be a little annoying at times, but I still like her. Also, this movie's soundtrack goes stupid stupid hard. The song Deck of the Yautja has been on repeat on my Spotify ever since I saw this movie. And that final scene on Yautja Prime was not only badass, but makes me really excited to see what is going to be happening next in this franchise. Although we haven't quite gotten to my perfect version of a Predator film, Predator Badlands has gotten the closest since the original film, and I think with these creatives, I think it'll happen. Now, the rest of these movies are all basically tied for number one, but I had to make the difficult decision and put Sinners at number 4. This movie is an amazing experience. This movie is literally the definition of that one meme that's like absolute cinema. This was probably the best experience I had in a movie theater in years, and it wasn't even due to like a rowdy crowd or anything like that. That was because in a very rare instance for me, it felt like I was in the movie and there was nothing else but this movie. Sinners literally grabbed me and didn't let me go until the movie was over, and even then, I just wanted more. Michael B. Jordan deserves some kind of award for being able to play two different characters that look the exact same and make them interact so seamlessly. Stack does make some questionable decisions, but I mean, that's just Stack. And Smoke is such a badass and tragic character that while being morally gray, you still root for. I've also heard something about Miles Catton being considered for being nominated for Best New Actor or something like that, and if that is true, I really hope he wins it, because not only can this man act his ass off, but he can sing the blues like no other. That scene in the barn where Sammy sings "I Lied to You" gave me chills, and I haven't felt chills in a theater in a very long time. And my god, Jack O'Connell as Ramek has got to be the best villain of 2025. He's both terrifying and intriguing. In one scene you'll be saying, damn, that guy's evil as fuck, and then in the next you'll be like, damn, I kind of want to join him. This movie is just so much more than an awesome vampire movie, even though it very much is an awesome vampire movie. It's also a love letter to different cultures and music, which the music. This has got to be my favorite soundtrack of the year. If you have not watched Sinners yet, you are doing yourself a disservice and you need to go check this movie out. Coming in at number 3 was my most anticipated movie of the year, and that is Superman. There was a lot riding on this movie. It's the start to a brand new DC universe, you have a new Superman, and people like me were a little suspicious of why there were so many characters in this Superman movie, but I think James Gunn really stuck the landing with this. Even with all these characters being introduced and some reintroduced, this still very much feels like a Superman movie. And look, I love Henry Cavill, but David Cornsweet is Superman. He absolutely nails the character as Clark Kent and Kal-El. The love story between him and Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane is the best I've seen of these two in live action. Rachel is probably the closest we'll ever get to a perfect Lois Lane, and Nicholas Hoult is an amazing Lex Luthor. He is the biggest hater to ever live. And you know what? He really showed me that I'm just not hating to my full potential. I even like the Justice Gang, even though I do wish they went with a cooler Green Lantern. And in typical James Gunn fashion, he makes a lesser known DC character one of the best parts of the movie. Mr. Terrific was funny and badass, and the rest of the characters were all very well acted and very fun to watch. I also love that they don't explain Superman's origin for the 1000th time and just throw us right into this world. I also feel like the world just needed a superhero movie like this. Superman is all about hope, and Lord knows our world needs that right now. It's not just seeing Superman beat the shit out of somebody, it's Superman inspiring people to be good, and him just seeing the good in everybody. And I feel that we should all aspire to be like Superman in that way. If you ever want to feel good while watching a superhero movie, Superman is definitely where it's at. I mean, Clark fights a giant fire-breathing kaiju. How can you not love that? And of course, everyone loves Crypto. No, not that kind of Crypto. That kind of Crypto. He's not a very well-behaved doggo, but he has good intentions. And how can you be mad at that adorable little face? This movie lived up to the expectations I had hoped for it, and even surpassed them. And now it's looking like the future of the DCU is looking bright again.
Fuck!
Coming in at number 2, just being knocked down from number 1, is going to be The Long Walk. This movie instantly became one of the best Stephen King adaptations I have ever seen. The way this movie blends that coming-of-age story from Stand By Me with this horrific scenario where if you want to survive and get anything you want in this post-apocalyptic world, you gotta walk. You get very attached to a lot of these boys throughout the movie, and it's just so tragic to know as you go throughout the film that there really is only going to be one survivor. There's no way of stopping this. There's no convincing these people to stop the game or anything. Unfortunately, most of our favorite characters are going to have to die. And this makes for a very emotional roller coaster of a movie. Plus, the incredible score really adds to these emotional moments. It really impacts you and makes you want to see these government authorities pay for what they have done. Like, if none of these boys, especially David Johnson and Cooper Hoffman, don't get some kind of Oscar nomination or something for these performances, they will have been robbed. I would have liked to have seen more of Mark Hamill as the Major, but he is used sparingly for a reason. He's just like this looming asshole that you really hope gets his comeuppance by the end of the movie. And that ending, God, that ending killed me. It's also crazy and scary how relevant this story is to our world now, considering this original story was written back in 1970. I really have nothing negative to say about this movie. The only reason it's not number 1 is just because I'd rather watch number 1 over The Long Walk. Because like Frankenstein, this movie doesn't have a happy ending. But what makes this different from Frankenstein is the movie isn't all tragedy. There's a lot of good bits of humor that make you almost forget the horrible situation that these boys are in. I absolutely love this movie and I can't recommend it enough. But even with how great The Long Walk, Superman, and Sinners are, I ultimately decided that my favorite movie of 2025 and my second most anticipated movie of my big 3 is Fantastic Four: First Steps. This movie just hits everything that I like. It's a family drama with great action sequences and a giant planet-eating entity. I absolutely love every member of this family, and they better have been good because they've been disrespected so many times in the past. Johnny and Sue are definitely the standout members of this family, but Pedro Pascal and Ebon Moss are perfect as Reed and Ben. They all really do feel like a family as they should, and they all get their time to shine. I do wish we would have gotten more time with Ben, but I'm still happy with the time that we did get with him. Those speeches that Sue gives are really inspiring, and she gets a very badass moment against Galactus. And Joseph Quinn just nails Johnny's character. He likes to joke around and, try to get some Silver Surfer cheeks, but at the end of the day, he still just wants to do the right thing, be helpful, and help people. Speaking of Silver Cheeks, I guess Julia Garner just decided that this year was going to be the year she was going to lock in, because she just does not miss. I, like many others, was wondering why Matt Shackman decided to use the female version of the Silver Surfer instead of the male version. I forget their names. But I guess he just knew that Julia was going to be the perfect fit for this role. She is not inherently evil, she is just forced to serve. And her little relationship with Johnny was honestly a highlight of the movie I did not think would be a highlight. Pedro also nails Reed's cold and calculative personality, kind of like someone else in the MCU. The visuals are some of Marvel's best. The black hole scene is literally like something straight out of Interstellar. This retro yet futuristic version of New York looks beautiful in every shot, not to mention the use of practical and digital effect to really bring the thing to life. Also, having Ralph Inson as Galactus was perfect. He has that perfectly deep and menacing voice that makes Galactus feel large and imposing. And that ending really shocked me for a second. I don't mean the post-credit scene, by the way, but that did shock me too. Again, I don't have anything negative to say about this movie. I think that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee would be so proud of this movie, and I really do think this is some of Marvel's best, and the Fantastic Four is my favorite movie of 2025. And that's my ranking of every movie I watched in 2025. Please, God, don't
Don't let me do another ranking video again.
This video was not meant to be this complicated and go through this much trouble to make. I promise in the future we won't have to worry about these problems anymore. Things just went wrong that I didn't think would go wrong. And I don't think I'm going to be doing a ranking video for a while. But don't worry, we're going to get back on schedule soon. And anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed this ranking, even if you didn't agree with me, because this took way too long to make. Mostly due to me procrastinating and, life stuff. I do plan to review every movie on this list that I didn't get to at some point this year, as well as reviewing some of the movies that I didn't get to that I heard were good. And if it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna rant a little bit, just about how thankful I am for you guys, and if you want to click off, that's totally fine. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. But if you want to hear me rant a little bit, then stick around. When I started this channel in September, I honestly didn't think it would go anywhere, at least not for a long time. I barely knew how to edit, still barely know how to edit, and I didn't even write out scripts for my reviews until my Good Boy review. Yes, I have to script these videos because I'm not very well spoken. If you go back and watch like my first 4 videos, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But to my surprise, we ended this year with 50 subscribers on YouTube, as I had hoped for in my Silent Night Deadly Night review, and roughly 37,000 views across all platforms. Now, I know most of those views are coming in from my shorts content, but to me that is still an insane number. Like, the fact that 37,000 people clicked on my videos or scrolled and found my video and decided to watch it is amazing to me, and I'm grateful for every single one of those people that decided to watch my videos, even if you didn't like the content you saw. And of course, I am also grateful for the 50 people that have subscribed to my channel. I was honestly going to be surprised if I had 30 subs by the end of the year, because that's about how many people I know. But a bunch of random people actually liked my content enough to subscribe to my channel, and I really appreciate those people. I appreciate all my subscribers, but especially those random people that didn't know who I was and ended up liking my videos. I'm sorry I haven't been very consistent at the end of this year. I mean, this video alone took me about 2 weeks because I was trying to push out other reviews like my Zootopia reviews and the next Godzilla-thon video. The holidays really snuck up on me, and I was procrastinating like a motherfucker. In 2026, I hope to be more consistent and try other ways to make my content better for you guys, and just learn more. Okay, I'll leave the mushy shit at that. Your guys' support really does mean the world to me, and I hope all of you know that. I promise I'll never abandon you guys. And if you stayed all the way through my stupid rant, I love you and thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, I hope you guys had a happy holidays and a happy new year, and I will see you guys soon.